welcome back to A Journey in Boots, from trauma to triumph. We have Dr. J back this week, so that's exciting. You can always tell when I'm amongst my veteran family because I get my ass chewed right the moment they start talking to me. All in fun. I got to say that. So I am your co-host, Dorothy Odell. I am the founder of Unstoppable Overcomers Productions, where we are a full-service media agency here to support you in all your glory, in all your media here, as well as we have the amazing Dr. Jay Royster. Welcome back to the show, Jay.
Yeah, I'm pretty talented. As my Zoom is my cell phone number. That is the extent of my technological expertise. I rely very heavily on Miss Dorothy. So thank you for doing all that you do. I am the founder of Semper Modus. It is an outpatient therapy practice that has veterans who are licensed to serve veterans. We definitely put our best foot forward and do the best we can with what we got. We get all kinds of people, civilians included, more than welcome. And we serve over 14 states and take all major insurances. So yay! Here we are.
You definitely want to connect with Dr. J if you need that kind of help. I know she's helped a lot of people. The one person I send all my people to that help.
In September, I hit 10,000 people served.
Wow.
So just me, which is insane, right? Yeah.
Holy crap. Well, and I really have to say shout out to her team, because she's not just herself. So shout out to all her amazing team. I know Sabrina, Norm. Yes. I don't know who else is on the team.
We haven't had Dr. Mike is my marine psychologist. We haven't had him on the show yet, but we will, because he has a nonprofit, and they are actually it's formed for education and research. So it's pretty amazing stuff. You got Dr. Corvea. We got Dr. Chavers, who will be on in December. She actually is a foremost expert in grief and loss. She's a pretty exceptional human being. Got Lindsay, got Mary, got all kinds of people to help the littles, and we are just here to serve. So, yes, any kind of problem, we got you covered. We'll take good care of you.
Yes. Civilians too. She's helped me out. I will say that. You can't live my life and not have some kind of trauma.
True. Haven't we all? But any trauma, anxiety, depression, adjustment disorder, like ADHD, any kind of compulsions, like we got you.
Perfect. All right. So I'm excited. Are you excited?
Yes.
Okay. I'm excited for tonight's guest. So I'm going to bring up the lovely and amazing Dr. Jane Garcia. She has served in the U.S. Army for over 10 years. 3.5 of that was in the reserves, and 6.5 was that on active duty. Wow. Her job was a nuclear, biological, and chemical specialist. No freaking clue what that is, but we're going to find out what that is tonight. And I'm super excited because she's my first one that we've interviewed with that background.
I think she's everybody's first one. Like, I've never even heard of that.
Well, I'm excited. After leaving the Army, she continued serving her community as a science and dual enrollment teacher at different grades from age 6 to 12. Wow. All right. So I'm done reading your bio because I want to hear just from you.
Yes.
I don't like reading people's bios. I just like finding out the person and how they tick.
Right.
So you go in the Army.
You know what? It was
like nuclear biomedical engineer. Like, you could totally be Air Force like me. Like, why Army?
Why Army? You know what? That's a really good question. Because I didn't know there was a difference.
Wow. I just went all the way back. I figured the one in the back of the building was the best, and I just kind of went for it. I had no idea either. I knew the Marines looked like the sexiest because I was 17 and didn't know any better, but I wondered why they were up front. I'm like, why are you sad up here all by yourself? Like, it was weird.
That explains a lot.
That it, right? All by your lonesome.
He was.
So I didn't know there was a difference, but serving was always something that I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I don't know how to explain that, but it was always something that I wanted to do.
Did anybody in your family serve?
No. Actually, I had one uncle, but I wasn't close to him.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. So we
You didn't
didn't.
go into the buddy system or anything. You just walked in the recruiting office and went, brown is my color.
Yeah. And it's still my color.
Oh,
Uh,
you do look beautiful, by the way. Yes.
still my color. Right. So I had an uncle, but I wasn't close to him. And he did during the Vietnam era time.
Mhm.
And then, yeah, that was it. But I knew also I wanted to go to school. So the school thing was a big, big part of that.
Mhm.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, and for a lot of veterans, for a lot of people, really, the education piece is a major piece.
Oh, absolutely.
After a while, we realize that there is more to it.
Mhm.
And it's the gift that keeps on giving. But in the beginning, it's the school piece, and we have it's one of the primary reason why women join the military. One is for the education, two is for opportunities that they may not normally get.
Travel.
Yeah, and the travel,
I
right?
wanted to go. That was my goal. Like, I wanted to get out of here. Yeah. And they stuck me
Yeah.
4 hours from my hometown. And I'm like, why? Because if they were stuck in Florida, I would have been a lifer.
Yes,
Absolutely.
they knew why they didn't put you there.
Yes. They didn't want me for 20 years. We already
Right.
talked about that. Yeah.
And so I did the reserve, but I found the reserve to have been inconvenient. It's like whenever there was a family function or some activity that you want to do, that's when you had to go and work for that weekend.
Yes.
So that was one piece. The other piece was that I was in nursing school. So I was a student nurse, and as I was in that process, I think I had an existential crisis where it's like, this is not what I want to do. And so in this in this space of, okay, this is not what I want to do. So what am I going to do now?
Mhm.
And that's when I left from the reserve and I went on active duty. And on active duty, that, being a nuclear chemical biological specialist,
Which
you
is
know,
what?
right?
What did you do?
So we do all kinds of things, right? We are the people who we're trained to respond to a nuclear attack. We're trained to respond to a biological attack. We're trained to respond to a chemical attack. And so we should be familiar with those different types of weapons and those different deployments of those weapons. So there's that. So we organize the response. We organize the training for companies. So if I'm in a company of 120 people, I take care of the training. I take care of the hazmat certifications and make sure we're OSHA compliant. So, so that's one piece. You have some of the guys who work in the research side. And so that's another aspect. What else do? We do, kind of fun stuff. And so we're in the science space, and I like being in that space. I think science is interesting. I like math. I think numbers are elegant, they're beautiful, and they make the world go round.
So you don't blow things up, though. You prevent
Um,
it from being blown up.
you know what? No, I'm not on the demo side of stuff.
Mhm.
I am more on the, okay, what is the best way to deploy this particular weapon? So like COVID is a good example. So for those of us who are in that space, we know, okay, how are we going to organize the response for service members How are we going to organize the response for civilians?
Mhm.
How are we going to monitor the spread of whatever this is? Whether it's how far do we have this radiation being spread in this particular area? How are we going to contain that?
Wow.
Yeah. If
Or the
we're
planning
dealing,
side.
yeah, we're more on the planning side, because then that's a big part
Yeah,
of,
it's huge.
yeah, it's huge. And we have to be able to know and identify what these things are very quickly.
Mhm.
So we have to also be able to, okay, this is what we have, this is what we're working with, this is what we're going to do. These are the people that we need to do it, and these are the resources we need to do it with.
Mhm.
And so we have to also be able to lead that, um, going forward. And so that as our commanders ask us questions, we can respond to those questions. And so that we can guide them in terms of, what is safe and what is best for all of us as a company, and
I
what is
have to
best.
go
Yeah.
ahead. I have to pick on
Chris.
you a little bit because that's
Okay.
typically an Air Force job. You know, all the planning and the preparation, not actually the doing of anything.
Yeah. Right.
She knows I'm right. Air Force does a lot of planning and preparation as opposed, and then they, they kind of inform the other branches and the other branches go do. But they don't really share that with you when you go in. It's like, oh, you're just going to be planning and prepping. I mean, I
Yes.
actually had a hands-on job, but that's not always the case. There's a lot
Yes.
of
So,
logistics in the Air Force.
right. I escaped. I don't know. Right. We do the planning. We do the, so let's say like, and a lot of the training as
Mhm.
well, where if I have this company of people, each person have to know how to respond, and it has to be second nature
Mhm.
as well. And
Right.
so we also do the training pieces to go along with that. We monitor the maintenance as well.
Nice.
So yeah, so the some of the um, monitoring equipment and stuff like that.
Mhm.
We do the schedule, the maintenance schedule, and make sure that they're maintained and they're ready. And so I actually was in charge of all of that for a while.
Wow. Did you pursue your education while you were in or when you got out?
Oh, that's a loaded question. Let's talk about that. We're here talking. So,
I love loaded questions. Well, double barrel.
right,
It's like I feel like I just
right?
loaded a gun.
This is a double barrel loaded question.
Usually
So,
is.
literally. So remember, I was a student nurse, and so when I went on active duty, I didn't really know, um, where I wanted to go
Mhm.
professionally, because now I am changing my entire major. What is it that I'm going to do now?
Mhm.
And which direction am I going to go?
Right.
As luck would have it, now I can say it's luck, but at that time, I was not pleased and I
Right.
was not impressed, right? Because, when you are at some of these duty stations in the boondocks all the way, right? We don't get access to the good schools.
Right.
So, you know what I mean? So, I wanted, if I had my way, I would have majored in chemistry. But the duty stations that I had, we didn't have access to a college campus where
Mhm.
they had a lab. And
It's because you went
so,
in the army. Honey, I love you. I love all branches. I'm just teasing.
but it's true.
Yeah, 'cause the Air Force always has a university. If you notice, it so does. It's ridiculous. It's
Yeah,
like, how spoiled are we?
yeah. And I had no idea. So there I was, trying to figure this stuff out. So we had business, we had psychology, I think those were the two big ones. So that's how I ended up in psychology. And so while I was on active duty, I had really good supervisors.
Oh, that's good.
I had one that was a jerk,
Yeah,
but
me too.
It's
overall,
always going
She
to have
was
one.
something else. Good Lord, she was something else. But I will tell you that psychology is fascinating.
it is.
And
It
it
is.
does have such a broad, I mean, this is my 5th career and I'm pretty happy with this one, you know. But I mean, if it was up to Dorothy, I'd be 120 because she thinks I retire from everything. But I love you. I love teasing her on this.
It was nice and quiet for 2 freaking weeks, let me tell you.
Well, we won't let that happen again. So, being this is my 5th career, but like finding the area of psychology what you're best suited for is pretty fascinating because there are so many facets of it.
Yes, I agree. So I did my undergrad and I have my undergrad is in social psych. But because I had so many of the science credits to get into nursing school, and I was actually in nursing school, I was able to have my teaching credential in biology to teach science, right? And to teach bio. So I did my bachelor's when I was on active duty, and then I did my master's, and this was in business um, when I was on active duty. And I must admit, I had, like I said, one jerk. So we're not going to talk about the one jerk.
Oh, come on, just a little bit.
You know what? I had a couple good ones. They made sure that we went to school. If you were not enrolled in school, it's like you're the scum of the earth. And you know how these people treat you when they think you're the scum of the earth, right? And so I had to be in school, and they made sure that we do that. They made sure they signed the tuition assistance forms and stuff like that. And so I was able to do my bachelor's in social psych. And that's when I for psychology, I had this Jewish Professor Levine, when I first started college. And he was just a cute little old man. He'd be like, Jane, what are you doing? And so he was my introduction to psychology. And then when I went on active duty, that's what I did, because that's what I had.
Mhm.
And then I was in the teaching space as an educator for a period of time. And so when I started my PhD program, I was like, okay, I got to do this. But I am in the cognition space. So my PhD is in cognition, cognitive science, as a psychologist, and which is a fascinating component of psychology, because like you say, there's so many different types of psychology. Where do you fit?
Right.
And so in cognitive psych, we look at brain anatomy, brain development, how we process information,
Mhm.
attention, and all these wonderful things that we take for granted. Cognitive science actually slow us down and force us to look at each process
Yes. And I
individually.
love you guys because I have a lot of people that I deal with. I work with a lot of nonprofits who do a lot of experiential therapy. And there are so many people, one is Dr. Tuturi, and he's like he's leading a study right now to 435 to 600 veterans who have symptoms of traumatic brain injury. And if you want me to, I'll send you a flyer because now I have your email. And people can just sign up. And it's interesting to me to see traumatic brain injury and how much and how significant that affects people's processes. And they don't know to go to a cognitive therapist unless the VA refers them. But they don't know to advocate for themselves and ask for it. It's like, I just have a hard time remembering, and I'm overwhelmed, and I can't seem to, I receive the information, but it takes me a minute to get the joke. And it's like, I see it clear as day, but like learning how to build that up, would they need a you?
Exactly. And
Yeah.
in the building of cognitive skills, um, and this is where, so I'll frame it for you this way. If a person goes into the military 18, 19, 20, our we are still having brain development between 18 to 24,
Mhm.
right? There's still major brain development that's happening at that time. And it occurs in our prefrontal cortex region. And that is the area that is responsible for judgment, reasoning, critical thinking, our
Mhm.
executive function. So these higher order thinkings, skills that we use as adults, is really the last part of our brain to come online. And so, because that's the last part of our brain to come online, that's a critical period too. However, when an individual joined the military, it's like that development either is put on halt or it delays, because in the military, they think for you. You don't get to make decisions. And as you should have been building those skills and developing those skills, well, that service member is not building those skills. They're not developing those skills. And even if they are, not at the rate of a person who is not a service member. And so, and understanding how those pieces connect when the person ETS,
Mhm.
exits military service, because it's like, how come, why do someone have to always tell you what to do?
Mhm.
But this is why because they simply haven't had those skills
Right.
and they have to build them.
Yes. And I will tell you, when people, after so many years, I can't tell you how many clients I have that are retiring and they're really struggling with what now.
Yes.
And they usually suffer around a year, like 12 months of depression, because they're really, really trying to figure it out. And it's not like they don't have an idea of what they want to do. It's just transitioning from, you've put on the same uniform for 20 plus years. Even though you go to different bases, you're driving to different facilities, you're still doing that job. Like, what is my value after service? Do I have any?
Right. And they have to be able to process that, which
Mhm.
is why I like, where I am now, to be able to process those things with, people, because as they say, okay, what am I going to do now? Again, that's a loaded question, because then it's reconnecting these people to who they were, because then our sense of self is so diluted as a service member. you know we're trained to make decision in the best long-term interest of the group.
Right.
That is what it means to serve.
Mhm.
And so we make decisions in the best long-term interest of the group,
Right.
whereas as a civilian, that's not how we make decisions. We make decisions in the best interest of ourselves and our household. And so the focus of the decision making process actually changes.
Mhm.
And so it's service members and veterans actually having that level of awareness. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Mhm.
That, oh, this is what this is. Okay. So how do I address that? How do I, deal with that? And even with the family, how does the family um, recognize that, okay, we have to talk this through, and then each person have to be given their part of the mission,
Mhm.
and so that they can move out smartly, right?
Mhm. I think it's easier with trauma, just for the simple fact it's like we don't verbalize that to the spouses or the family like we do trauma. Like trauma, we can give them a list of symptoms and say, hey, if you see your wife or your husband or your significant other is doing these things, please reach out. We don't do that with cognitive processing. And there are so many people that probably have a processing disorder and not just a traumatic brain injury, but I'm talking about other people that just really struggle to take in the information. I call them the highways of the brain, the neural pathways send the messages to the wrong place.
Yes.
So they're not processing that information. So they receive it, like you tell them a joke and you're like waiting for them to respond,
Right.
and they don't, and it's like, I don't get his jokes. I don't understand. And, I hear that often and I'm like, this sounds more like a processing issue. Here, let me refer you to
Such and such.
Right.
Right. And
Because I'd
what
rather
also,
rule it out than you have it and not know and not be able to
right.
do anything about it.
Right. And I think what people also don't realize with trauma, there is this part of the brain, it's called the hippocampus.
Yes.
And people don't realize that along with trauma comes some shrinking of our hippocampus. And the hippocampus is responsible for the assisting us in consolidating and making new memories. Right.
Mhm.
And so if this particular little area is smaller than it should be, then we don't remember details about event. We don't remember all of the things about the event, right?
Mhm.
And so therefore the person have difficulty remembering and therefore processing the event to be able to get on the other side of healing, right?
Yep.
Um, Yeah, and dependent on how traumatic the event is. Um, and we've heard this part, the amygdala,
Mhm.
for emotional um, processing of our emotions, where if this is a traumatic event for the person, the more traumatic the event is, there's some components of it that is vivid, but all of the details are not there sometimes, right? And so this is why therapy is important. This is why having a support system as well is so essential, because then and not just a support system, but a support system that understands, you know, the science behind it, and practitioners being able to talk about these things in layman's term so that people understand how the pieces connect,
Mhm.
you know, in
Yeah.
all our getting we get understanding. And so as we understand how the pieces connect, then when so and so have difficulty processing whatever we told him or her,
Mhm.
we're not as impatient.
Right. And that is true. I have noticed that once, you nailed out, like after a few sessions, we usually do adjustment disorder with anxiety initially, and then just kind of go in from there, because I'm not going to diagnose you with, you know, long-term chronic PTSD if like this is our first session. So, because the insurance reimbursement, you have to dot the lines. I know it's different in Canada, Dorothy, but like here we have to do it a certain way. So love, red leaf or whatever your flag says. But anyway, I just terrorize her every show. I have to
Every,
pop.
every chance you get.
You.
And you wonder why I have
I'm from
PTSD.
Michigan, okay? Like I'm right across the border. Like that is my home state. So, I live in Florida now, but like back then, long story short, I have to tease Dorothy a little bit. She knows that's how I love her, and that's my love language. So if I terrorize you, you're loved. Anyway,
It's when she's indifferent, she just doesn't give a shit.
that's a little scary. As long as I give you a little bit of oomph. But I think, breaking those barriers down and getting to the root of the problem, and then those individuals acknowledging, like, yes, that's it. That's exactly what it is. That is my challenge. I have one lady, and like I said, I've worked with over 10,000 people as of September. individually. That's not including semper modus. So it's pretty amazing how many people we're helping. But if you look at it on a massive scale, in America alone, it's 325 million people. And I believe 37% of the country has trauma. So we have a lot of work to do.
Yes, yes. We have a lot of work to do, because and trauma is interesting because we can all experience the same, but internalize it so different and therefore respond to it so different.
Yeah,
And
everything
that has always fascinated me. Yeah.
Based on experience
That's
and perception, because somebody could
right.
say something to you, like I could pick on Dorothy about Canada, and she just smiles and knows that I love her. But she
Right.
could be like crying in the corner if she had different experiences with me. If she
Right.
thought that I truly meant that, like she could be absolutely heartbroken,
Right.
you know? So it's all about like receiving that information and how you would take that.
Right.
Okay, so we've got a long thing here. Let me read this out to you guys. Somebody,
Okay.
sorry that I'm covering you, Dr. Jane. We do badass things at a young age and excel at them. Then we get out and civilians underestimate us or say we are too skilled. But they say they support veterans. It's a rough transition that can last for many years until we find the right job that uses our skills and appreciates us if we are lucky. And let's not even get into the subject of being a female veteran, military sexual trauma, being a caregiver to another veteran, etc. What helped me was my job, and then I started a business.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
Keep it moving. Whatever
Yeah.
gives you hope and purpose. I mean, that's what the SEAC said to me when I first met CZ Lopez, and he just retired last November. He told me if a veteran doesn't have hope and purpose, he doesn't have anything. And he meant he is in a generalization, but like if they don't have hope and purpose, they don't have anything. And I believe that to be very true. Finding like your mission, how you serve. You can serve by, talking to the guy at McDonald's who's trying to get $5 out of you. You can just ask him how he's doing.
Right.
I mean, he
And
might shame you and tell you you're going to hell because Jesus doesn't love you because you don't give him $5, which is what always happens to me. But like, I try and talk to him at least.
Where the hell will you find these people?
Tampa.
Jesus. She says, yes, purpose isn't what keeps us alive and is purpose. I think she meant is what keeps us alive and healthy.
Yeah.
Absolutely agree. If you feel hopeless, if you don't feel hope, you're in hopelessness, which leads to depression, which leads to suicide in a lot of cases.
Right.
Yeah.
Hope and purpose. There are a couple of things with that, and because when you are dealing with hopeless person with no goals or no purpose, they are self-destructive.
Mm-hmm.
And they have no problem destroying themselves and others.
Right. Life has to have meaning, whatever that looks like.
Right. Whatever is meaning for you. Another thing that's central to people's readjustment is their faith, whatever that is. If you're going to worship that tree over there, then you do that.
I say that all the time. Yeah.
Right? Because then it is one aspect of a person having hope, and so for the individuals who are Christians, one of the story I always share with them is the story of David, especially those guys who are deployed and those guys who are this. David is described as a man after God's heart.
Mm-hmm.
But David also was not given the opportunity to build the temple because he had so much blood on his hands.
Right.
And so he killed way too many people. And so God said that you cannot build me this temple. But even though that's what he did for a living, he still had the privilege of being called a man after God's heart, right? Mm-hmm. And so how do we frame it for individuals based on whatever their faith is? Because not everybody is Christian. You know what I mean? And so, um, whatever they believe, how do we anchor their transition into their individual faith, whatever that faith is?
Right.
Because then, along with that particular faith, comes a set of principles that they're expected to live by. And because service members are so structured in our thinking and so structured in how we do things, it's good to for them to have some kind of structure and some kind of framework from which they're operating out of and from which they're living their life out of. Right?
Yeah. 100%. 100%. All right. So now I got to ask. So we started with your journey, like what got you into the military. We're seeing what kind of a badass you really are with all this amazing nuclear chemical stuff, biology. Like I'm still fascinated with all this stuff. So now, what made you decide to get out of the Army?
You know what? There were a couple things happening at that time. I had gotten married, and then I had my son, and so I wanted to be able to be present, and to be able to mother properly. And whether or not we like it, military service not conducive for, you know what I mean? Like they say, if we wanted you to have a wife or a husband, we would have issued you one.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, that is the mindset. You're absolutely.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly what Norm thinks.
Yep.
Yes,
True.
you know, we would have issued you one.
Yep.
But now that you have one, you need to figure that out, right?
Right.
And so that was really one of the major precipitating ideas or reason why I decided to exit. And when I was going through this transition to exit, it's like I, was going back and forth. And I had this supervisor. I told him, I said, you know what? I'd like to rethink it and I'd like to stay. And so he called Department of the Army and say, you know what? We need, this person has changed their mind and would like to stay, whatever. And Department of the Army was like, no, 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 no. She already said that she was going to ETS. Let her go. Okay. So, but this was just before the deployment, the invasion of Iraq, actually. And so I had decided that I was going to exit because I think we have to tell them like 6 months out. So that during that last 6 months, that's when they had decided, okay, we'll do the Iraq thing or whatever. But I feel like, things in our lives lined up in such a way that when the invasion of Iraq was occurring, and I don't know how I dodged the bullet, I was on terminal leave, actually. I was on terminal leave, and some of my colleagues were stop loss, but I wasn't stop loss. And so I was able to ETS. And so that's really what happened, because I surely was changing my mind. And they were like, no, 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 no. And so that was that. And so that door closed. And so I when they say you don't look to the left, you don't look to the right, head and eyes straight forward, and you move forward, and so it was just moving forward.
What is ETS for civilians?
Oh, end of time in service.
Okay. I figured it's probably something simple, but
I was going to say separation, but yes, ETS is actually what it means.
Yeah. And so, and I don't say, how some people say, when I get out, I don't use that. It sounds like you're getting out of jail or something. Or, you know, when I get out, like you rob the bank and you're you
Well, it
know,
might be real for them. You never know. Like those barrack inspections are a beast.
they they are.
Just saying.
They are.
Yes.
They are. That's like a complete thought. They are, you
They
know?
are. Yes,
And
absolutely. It does feel that way some days.
yeah,
And it was meant to be that you got out and became, got your PhD in cognitive
yeah,
psychology.
yeah, yeah.
That's fascinating.
And I feel like now everything just kind of lines up to where, as I was on this journey with this degree, and I'll come back to another story, but it has changed the way I parent.
Mhm.
It changed the way I practice as a teacher. It changed the way I see my reintegration process. It changed the way I see my family and my fellow veterans. It literally changed me because I became grounded
Mhm.
in this idea that no two human, and this is the fascinating thing, right? No two human brains are exactly the same,
Thank God.
but there are 8 billion people on this planet.
Right.
That is, whew,
Right.
you know, we
Yeah.
are literally a one of a kind edition. No
Yeah.
two human brains are exactly the same. We either differ very briefly or very slightly in anatomy, or we have slight variation in our chemistry. And so that ultimately gives us variation in
Mhm.
people.
Mhm.
And and so it speaks to just this: as long as this earth rotates on its axis and revolve around the sun, there will never ever be another you.
Yes.
And that is fascinating to me. Absolutely fascinating. So, but I wanted to get us to a story. So here in Arizona, we have the healing memory workshops. Do you guys know about that one?
No,
No?
I don't.
It's a fascinating workshop where we go for the weekend and we process some of the memories, um, whichever memory you choose to process during that time, and so forth. And so I've been going to do that every year for probably the last probably 8 or 9 years. I go once a year because then it allows you to process so much,
Mhm.
and it allows you to reconstruct and really think about things. So about 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, I went. And I when I came back from that weekend, I called my ex-husband and I said, we haven't had this conversation, so let's have it. What was I like? You know, when you were married to me and I was still serving and stuff. He's like, that's a loaded question. I need a drink for that. Um, so let me he's like, I need a drink for that. So I said, okay, well, you get a drink. You think about how you're going to answer that question and get back to me, right? Because then we individually don't see ourselves outside of ourselves,
Right.
you know? But the
Yeah.
people the people living with us, they do, you know? And so how rigid are you, right?
Right.
Um, are you giving orders or are we having a conversation? You know? Um, and so there was that piece. And so the repairing of that particular relationship. And then we had 2 sons together. We have 2 sons. And so how so when I asked my sons, so we also had that conversation about, okay, so what was I like as your mom? They were like, well, you are right, but you know, you there was
Your
this,
delivery could use some work. Yeah. Mhm.
right? Um, and so we had to have those conversations about, well, mom, you did this way, and maybe it would have been nicer to have done it this way or whatever. And again, it's repairing those relationships.
How
And
amazing of a relationship do you have with your children where you have the opportunity to be totally open and honest and they comment?
you know what? And
Like,
that's
how
why it was,
amazing is that? Like, I'm
yeah,
surprised that they were like, well, mom, yeah, you did this, that, and the other thing, and that was not the greatest way to execute that.
right. You know,
Because we could say, hey, what was I like? And they kind of walk on eggshells because they're not really sure if they can critique you, like
right,
honestly and truly. So how
right.
cool are you that you were open to it?
Yeah, and I feel like we have to come to that place of being open to being
Yes.
criticized because we don't know everything. Um, and even though in our specific professions, and don't laugh.
Oh, honey, I wholeheartedly agree with you. I'm going back to school to get my second doctorate, and I will tell you that is the most humble experience you will ever have, because when you go back to school, it is amazing how much you don't know.
Exactly. You know, we are experts in our sliver little, you know what I mean? Very tiny.
Yeah.
And when you think about the vastness and the expansiveness of knowledge and information,
Yeah.
you realize very quickly, like these old people would say, you don't know nothing. You don't know nothing but nothing. You
Yes.
don't know anything about anything. You know
Yes.
what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. And I figured with all the clients I've served and how many modalities and things I've gotten trained in, and then I go back to school to get my PhD in this, and it's like, oh, academically, look at how much is out there that I had no access to.
Right.
So finding that access and realizing there's more. Wait, there's more. Wait, there's more, and it's like,
There's
wow.
always more.
Right.
There's
There's
always
always
more.
more.
We
Yeah.
know that surface level, but like digging into knowing more and realizing how much you don't know is very humbling.
Shh.
Yes,
You know?
100%. I just want to answer this question. What rank were you when you left the military?
E5. So I was Sergeant Garcia.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So, and then sergeant at home. So no wonder why the husband needed a drink.
Well, she was outnumbered. It's not her fault. 3 men? Come on.
I'm just teasing you. I mean, honestly,
That's what we do here. We tease. It's okay.
3 T's, right?
the
And
one thing I wish that I really wish that I would have spent what I'm doing now back when my uncle was alive, because we could have had so many more conversations. Him and I, we were close. He was stationed 4 hours originally from where we were living, and then from there he went to Calgary, like some whole other province. So, but I really wish that I would have had this knowledge back then, but I mean that wasn't meant to be. So, a leader at work and at home. That's right.
that's right. I like
Even in
that.
our speeches, we're just assertive and we know what we want,
That's all.
whether you're civilian or whether you're military.
And I'm going to take that phrase, a leader at home and work.
Yes.
I like that. Thank you for that. We and in the workplace, in businesses, as you run your own business and stuff like that, one of the things that sometimes, the assertiveness makes people uncomfortable. But because we have been in leadership positions, and being a leader, I do ascribe to the servant leadership model, because I resent someone asking me to do something that they're not willing to do.
Oh, yeah.
I find it to be so hypocritical.
It is.
Mm.
you know. And so as
How do you
we
deal with that in the civilian world? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but how do you deal with that now when you're in the civilian world?
That's another loaded question,
See that?
right?
Well,
See how long it took her to breathe in reply? Like it is challenging with civilians. I will tell you that. They definitely have a different work ethic and they ask a lot more questions than most military. Like, yeah, I'll do that. That sounds good. Or no, I'm not doing that. Okay.
Right.
But with civilians, it's like even though you'll stand with them and do it with them, they don't respect that as much as a person who served.
Yeah, there's a different level of commitment to
Yes,
whatever
that's it.
task.
She wrapped it all
Yeah.
up in one statement. I love it.
Yeah, there's a different level of commitment to the task that we are working on. And so here's the thing with service members, veterans, and civilians. As a service member, you learn to function as part of a team,
Yes.
because if you of the team, you're going to struggle for the 2 years, the 5 years, the 20 years you're serving. You are going to struggle if you do not know or if you did not learn how to be a part of a team. So that's one piece. And then I mentioned this earlier, being a part of that team, we are cultured during the militarization process to make decisions that is in the best long-term interests of the team,
Yes.
not the individual,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
And so here we are making this transition to civilian life where sometimes people don't know what they're doing. They don't know where they fit in the scheme of the organization in the workplace. They don't know where they fit. And because they don't know where they fit, I say they're running around like bastards.
Yeah. Yeah. And I fired people who thanked me, by the way.
Yeah.
So, I mean, because as a leader, like I love the book by Simon Sinek called Leaders Eat Last. Little shout out to that guy. Not that he cares, but because he's super, super famous. But it's just pretty amazing in like finding what they're best at, or taking when you terminate someone's employment, like you're taking away their security, but at the same time, if you can validate them as that, they are a good human being and they're trying really hard. However, this is not necessarily the place for you. So let's look at what you do well. I said Dorothy, sorry. What they do well, and then, kind of hint to that by the end of the conversation, and then they thank you for terminating them. It's interesting how that works out.
Yeah. Yeah. Because then people really have to know where they fit
Yes.
in order to be successful.
But when you terminate somebody, if you give them hope and purpose at the end of something that they will actually succeed at, it's not a terrible day.
Right. Because chances are they did not like being there anyway.
Correct. Yeah, I've been fired for a lot less. Like I ate a donut on a break in a gas station at 3 a.m. one time and I got terminated. And I'm like, no hope, no purpose. Cool. I was 18. I was waiting to go into MEPS. Like I didn't care. But, I mean, there's a lot of people. It's like, I've never been fired. It was very traumatic. And I'm like, I understand. But dude, I've been fired a lot. I get fired by clients. Like it's a thing. So it's just kind of like a mindset.
Yeah. And sometimes it's fun being fired. I've been fired once. It was amazing.
It
I
was
was like,
great.
thank
I loved
God.
it. It's like, I
Wonderful.
didn't quit you. You quit me.
That's right.
you can't handle the truth.
Yes.
So
Believe me, I'll tell you. So
Yeah.
that's another challenge I have. I'm still
Right?
working on that. I'm not quite 50, and it's not going to change by March. So, it is what it is. If you don't
It
like
is what it is.
come see me.
Right? And we have different areas. So, in this psych space where the dimensions of self.
Yeah.
And so, what people don't realize is that as we are making this transition, we're moving across various institutions and various cultures,
Yes.
right? And
Yeah.
so, I'm leaving the military culture to go into the civilian world. And
Mhm.
even though I was a civilian before, I haven't been in that space for a while now. What have changed in this new area? Right? In this new place that I'm entering. So, what have changed there? But even more importantly, I have changed.
Mhm.
I have changed from my experiences. I have changed based on where I am in my development. So, I have changed as well. And so, the reintegration process and that transition, people struggle in various areas. They may not struggle in all areas, because veterans may say, okay, this area or that area, um, you know, our finances, our sense of self, our emotional space, psychological space, that those familial relationships, what experiences we had in the military, because for some people, they may have one or two experiences that altered the course of their lives and changed them forever,
Mhm.
right? The
Mhm.
type of discharge that they had as well,
The
because people don't
lack
realize,
of education for me when I went through separation was extremely alarming. Like it took me almost 25 years to realize I had benefits. They didn't tell me anything.
wow,
Sign here, initial here, initial here. You got to go down to processing. You got to do this. You got to do that. Got to do this. Got to do that. Hey, by the way, we know you gave up your apartment, but you got to stay somewhere for 2 weeks. Like I was homeless because they extended my separation. It was terrible. That's what I mean. Like deciding like that could have broke me.
right, right,
So it is mindset. It is, your perception. It is your ideas. What's next type mindset. Like I just kept it moving, not knowing that I could stop. That
right.
never entered my mind. But other people, it's like I give up. I'm done. I can't take no more.
Yeah. And
And I'm
and
like,
that leads,
pile on. I'm used to it. Come on.
I'm a glutton for punishment. you
I
know?
was for a very long time. So yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing is the expansive, like varying areas of psychology. Like I have IO psych, but I don't do that work because I went back and got a second master's. Whereas you have, a doctorate in cognitive processing. Then there's forensic psychology. And I don't think people really understand which one is which or what we do.
No.
Everybody hears forensic psychology and they're like, oh, I'm going to profile criminals and work at the FBI. Like, no, there's 2 spots. Like, that's it. There's no place in the FBI at Langley for behavioral sciences because you're getting in school and I want that job. Thank you. So,
Right.
like, that's not going to happen because I don't have the right education for it.
Right. Right. You know? And so all of these various dimensions, the layman doesn't really understand that
No.
we're actually dealing with all these various facets
Yes.
of our reintegration and to our transition. And so this is what makes the transition such a complex process. And I feel like, people minimize how complex this process really is.
Yes.
And so I always, when people ask me, I always tell them, if getting a job was enough, then we wouldn't have the conversations that we're having. And some veterans wouldn't have the challenges that they're having. If
Mhm.
employment was enough,
Mhm.
it's not enough,
No.
right?
Yep.
That 360 sense of self, that purpose. How am I going to settle with my family? What is my new role within my family? Because now I am no longer putting on this uniform and
Right.
going to this place. I no longer I may have my friends, that I served with, but that support system that the military provides is no longer there.
Yes.
So now I have to create a new support system in my new place, wherever that new place is. But here's the kicker. When, let's say, I went into the military, but I came from a dysfunctional environment, right? Okay. So
You can
I
say
think this,
it's fine.
I'll just use you,
Hey, I did this story on TV. Like, people know my stuff. It's good.
right? And this is going to hit different when I say it, right? People who leave from those kinds of environments and they go to the military and they find stability,
Mhm.
they find camaraderie, and they find these things that they never had. And now it's time for them to exit military service. And in a large number of circumstances, these individuals return to this environment that was unsupportive from the very beginning.
Right.
And what veterans don't realize is that maybe they would stand a better chance elsewhere
Yeah.
because the environment you left probably didn't change,
No, it's the
but
same.
you changed.
Yes.
You see,
Yep.
you changed
Hmm.
and you've grown and you've whatever. And so returning to this environment that was non-productive in the very beginning sometimes delay the reintegration process for the veteran because then now they're in back in this chaos
Hmm.
that they no longer know how to handle because they're coming out of such a structured, supportive environment. Um, and so that's the kicker. And so I feel like as part of the TAPS program, the transitional program, those are the conversations that people who are getting ready to exit need to, be having and need to hear, because then these are very important things that needs to be taken into consideration
Hmm.
so that they can make informed decision and be realistic about, okay, what's really going on over there.
So when you go
And
into DC and fixing it,
you know what?
like, honey, we need your help. Trust and believe. I know you don't like the cold because you live in Arizona, but like, can you adapt? Your blood will get thicker. I promise. It's a thing.
You know what? Honestly, and you and I can definitely talk about that offline because I
We need you.
here's my thing with the veteran community, which is why, like I wasn't teaching. I love being a teacher, but I was always in some way, shape, or form involved with the veteran community. And I always tell people that group of people, that veteran community, I can serve until the day I die.
Yes, because there are people
Yeah, they're our
in
people.
our
You know what I
family,
mean?
So like,
Yeah.
it's very rare I find somebody who's like, you don't know anybody that served ever. Well, my uncle, there it is,
Yeah.
because we still are of the generation where our extended family absolutely was drafted. So,
Right.
most of the time, that's why I say veterans and their family, because the
Yeah.
majority are.
Right. You know? And so I can serve that group of people until I die.
Yes.
And the extent to which I would go for a veteran, I wouldn't go to that extent for a civilian.
You would or you wouldn't?
I would think twice to do it.
It's because they're worth it. I'm Veterans Day was Monday, and I definitely have a lot of people who thank me for my service, Dorothy included, because she's amazing. And if she was, American, her butt would be in the Air Force with me, but she's not. She's Canadian. So
Yes,
we love you. I'm just saying, like, if you were in America, you totally would have served. I totally see you doing that, making a lifelong. She'd be a colonel somewhere, living large.
We
But
do have the military here.
yeah, but you didn't want to do Canada, so it's okay. We know It's all right.
You know, you don't want to do that. You don't want to be, the royal, none of that.
None
No.
of the royals. You don't need all that. So, yeah. So anyway, I'm just teasing her. She knows. But like, I could totally see her being, in the Air Force, the Army. I don't think the Marine Corps, maybe the Navy, like possibly she would fit into any of that. She just has that ability, that mindset, that encouragement. I think that she's very much a leader and she would really serve us well. So when they wish us, Happy Veterans Day, I always say, you're worth it.
Yes.
Because you are worth serving. And
Yes.
some people get teared up and overwhelmed at the point of me saying that, but I mean it genuinely. Like,
Yes.
you're worth serving. You're worth going to war for. You're worth preserving our freedom for. And a lot of people just really get overwhelmed when you say things like that, but I firmly believe that to be true.
Yes, I do too. And I guess that's why we serve. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because
Dorothy
people
just wants to be American. That's why she served us. But
Hello. I am part American.
I know she's like 10 minutes from Detroit, so I love to tease her.
My great grandmother is from Durand, Michigan.
See, holy cow, that's
There it is.
crazy. Because my grandmother lived in Owasso, and I'm very familiar with Durand. Like, my uncle was the chief of police there. No kidding.
And I do not have my dual citizenship because not one freaking family member decided to get theirs. So, and then I tried to get mine, but my grandfather was already dead. So he would have had to get his. Then my dad would have had to get his in order for me to get mine. But no, they all freaking died on me. So here I am, stranded in Canada with American blood.
Like, what do you need done?
Right?
We'll talk about it.
Right? It's funny. It's funny. Dorothy said that they all died on me like they planned on dying.
Yeah, they did. They're like, sorry, Dorothy, time's up.
Well, okay, so seriously, my great grandmother is the oldest that has ever lived, and I think she was 90. Now, this is on my dad's side, who's has the American roots. So his grandmother, my great grandmother, died in her early 90s. Other than that, everybody died at either 74 or below. So my dad died at 69. My uncle completed suicide at 42. My dad's sister died in her mid 50s of cancer. The baby brother died. The one that served died in early 50s of a heart attack. Wow. So there's only one sibling left out of 5 of them, and she's in Hong Kong. So I mean, realistically, if you look at my bloodline, I'll be 50 in 2 years.
Wow.
So I'm like there. And so I just live.
We got more shows to do. You can't.
No, we got way more shows to do.
I get that. And so, then that's why I'm taking care of myself.
Let's talk about the difference between outpatient therapy and cognitive therapy. Apparently, we need a show because people don't know what it is.
Right.
They don't. I would totally send you people. I'm like, do you take TRICARE West? Like, let's go.
We're definitely going to talk about that offline. I
love it.
Oh, wow. Okay, I'm going to do this one other piece. I was just looking at the time.
We don't care. We love this.
Okay.
I'll talk to you.
I want to be respectful for everybody's time. So if we could wrap it up in the next 10 minutes, that would be great.
Okay, good. So there is this treatment. It's called brain balancing. Mm-hmm. And I'll send it to you, Dr. Oyster. The guy who created it, he is also a veteran. It's FDA approved. And it's an amazing treatment. So what they do is they hook you up. It's like a mini EEG thing. And they hook you up. And then they monitor your brain waves. And if it's too high or too low, you get a tiny electric shock
Hmm.
to recalibrate the waves.
Yep.
Oh my God. I was like, this, the technology and the science, they all make sense. And it's like, psh, right? Um, and so good for PTSD, good for ADHD, good for all kinds of different things. And
Well, you know how
so,
usually they take
mhm,
the blood and they could tell us like what we're deficient in, whether it's low iron, low magnesium, low this, low that. Why can't we do that with the brain so we can give them the right medication instead of playing like Russian roulette of SSRIs? Like we
you
need to
know,
get
we do need to get there. We need to be able to say, okay, this is what your anatomy looks like.
there.
These are the amount of neurotransmitters, or maybe you're low in this neurotransmitter, that neurotransmitter,
Right.
as opposed to guessing maybe you are not producing this particular neurotrans or whatever. And
Hmm.
so that we can absolutely um, be fully in the medical model,
Yes.
right? And
Yep.
so when a patient is diagnosed, sorry, um, they can have blood tests or imaging or whatever to fully substantiate the diagnosis,
Hmm.
as opposed to doing that diagnosis based on a list of things and some medical speculation.
Right.
We need to get to that place as a profession.
Yeah, because there's no medication for post-traumatic stress disorder, but we can get medicated for the symptoms. And they're always
Right.
going to run you with SSRIs of depression first and foremost. And it's like,
Right.
I'm not suicidal, I'm not depressed, I just have PTSD.
Right.
So it's always the challenge of like fighting the system on that. Stop
Right.
drugging me and listen.
Right. You
We have
know,
a question here. Did you just say that pretty much shock the brain? Because that sounds brutal.
It's an electric shock that's you can't even notice it. Like
you don't
it's
know
so
that.
small. Like it what it does is it the neurotransmitters are the highways of the brain, and this just kind of gives the brain highway a detour. Brain balancing, is found to be very
Effective.
yes, but they're doing research on it now.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Hmm. That sounds
So
shocking.
it's not like ECT. It's not like electroconvulsive therapy, like bite
No.
down on this wooden spoon and we're gonna, just give you a frontal lobotomy. Yeah, it's a little stimulation. It's almost like watching Netflix, and it's less than if you're shocked by some dude hopping on the screen. Like it's not that significant. It's just
No.
this line and it goes doot doot and then it keeps going.
Yes.
Hmm.
And it's really, and I what I like about it too, it's not invasive.
No.
Um and so forth. So it's really effective, and it's the fact that it is not invasive. You can go, you do it, you're done, and then you're not relegated to have to keep coming as well,
Right.
because then the brain needs a way to be able to repair itself.
Right.
And so as we get access to various neural pathways and recalibrate those waves so that we can get either reestablish the neural pathways that we had, or get access to new ones,
The new
so
highway.
that,
Yeah.
yeah, to new highways, neural highways, so that we can do more, we can have more focus. We're not in the brain fog, because some people
Right.
talk about being in that brain fog
Absolutely.
of
Especially
just,
after COVID.
yes,
There are so many people who struggle with brain fog. I hear it all the time. What is
yes.
rightempower.com?
Oh, reintegrate. That is the company my colleague and I have formed.
Awesome.
And yeah, we are, really wanting to do the reintegration workshops um, for veterans, for women veterans in particular, because then the needs for women, are also different as
Where are
well.
you at in Arizona?
I'm in Phoenix.
Awesome.
Ooh.
Okay, so I need you to stay on after the show because I'm gonna hook you up.
Okay.
I gotta connect you to somebody.
Yes.
Mhm. All right. So we're going to get to our last question of the night,
Yes.
which is, what is the one thing that nobody knows about you, Dr. Jean?
Wow. The one thing that people don't know. Oh, I know. Um, I love dancing. That is like the best thing in the world to do.
I love that.
Dance
What
it
kind
out.
of dancing?
Oh
What?
man, all kinds of dancing. Well, you guys don't know. So I'm originally from the Caribbean, right? So we have all these really good dances. And I just, you just two pans and I'm moving.
I love it. That's amazing.
Love, love, love it.
Where
All right.
at the Caribbean? Let's answer
I'm
that.
from Belize. So
Oh,
one thing people, yeah. Well, so actually one
Belize.
people,
It's beautiful.
yes, don't know about me. I'm a member of an indigenous tribe called the Garifuna people.
Wow.
And so we are one of the few indigenous tribes still in Central America, that still have a language, that still have a culture,
Amazing.
that have survived all these centuries.
Well, I just spent the last hour being shocked. So thank you. Yeah. I think
It's
you're
electrifying.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. She told me. She goes, I got a lady. I'm like, all right, here we go. And she's like, she's gonna blow your mind. Well, she did. Good job. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're
Thank you so
welcome.
much. Thank you so much for having me, Dorothy. Thank you, Dr. Royster.
Yeah.
You
I love
are.
it. This is
Oh,
awesome.
you know yes. She knows my culture,
That's
right?
amazing.
Love that. Love
Yeah.
that. So where can they reach you, Dr. Jane? If somebody wanted to get in
So
touch with you.
yes, the website is there, or they can email me or on LinkedIn, or they can email me at just Jane Garcia, 658 at gmail.com, or they
Awesome.
can call me. Yes. You know what? I don't, yeah, we're in Nicaragua. We're in a lot of. They had actually asked me to work on a project, and I think I will, to do the education department among the Garifuna people because we're like a transnational nation. It's a whole thing.
I love
Yeah,
it.
but
Awesome.
yeah.
Wow.
So my phone number, I'll put it on. It's 323-239-1302. And once people go on the website, they can always put an interest form, and that interest form comes to me.
Say that again. 323.
239-1302.
Okay.
The website and the Facebook social media link is in the show notes. I don't usually put people's phone numbers out unless I have permission, and I didn't ask that. So I can add that to the show notes, and I can also add your email to that if you'd like
Yes, please.
to.
Thank
Okay.
you.
I
And
will
then
do
I'm on LinkedIn too.
LinkedIn. Okay.
Yeah.
All
Did I
right.
send that to you, Dorothy?
I have you put on for the social media site. You would put the Facebook. You didn't put LinkedIn, but I connected. I had when you and I are connected on LinkedIn. So I had when I did the advertising for the show, I had tagged you in it.
Okay. Yeah, you did. Okay.
Yeah. So, but I will add that, especially when I go to add it to Spotify and things like that.
Okay. Very good.
What's
All
my
right.
phone? I just texted you.
Okay.
I love this. Thank
Yes.
you to Dally here that has been so amazing throughout the entire show. So thank you so much for all your questions and your comments. We appreciate
Yes.
you.
Thank
And
you.
those of you that didn't comment, that's okay. We know you're shy. And again, because we did celebrate Veterans Day / Remembrance Day on Monday. A shout out to all our veterans. Thank you for your service, and we also, on the Canadian side, we want to remember all of those that didn't come home from service, and so big shout out to you and remembering you
And last
and your
Monday's
family.
Unstoppable Overcomers, because it was a good Memorial Day, Veterans Day show.
Yes.
So look for that as well on Dorothy's channel.
Yes, go over to Unstoppable Overcomers on YouTube, subscribe, share with all your buddies, especially the military guys, because there is this show. What Unstoppable Overcomers has had a lot of interviews with veterans over the years. So check us out.
There's a lot of us.
Yeah, and the stories are fascinating. You know, dependent on the era that they served, where they served, their background, you know, what challenges, because we don't all have the same challenges as we're making the transition. It's interesting.
Taking the courage to go and be interviewed by someone after you've experienced what you have. I mean, that's pretty brave. Like, I knew I shied away from it for 25 years. And then I just kind of said, you know, screw it, and decided to start sharing. But for the most part, like, thank you so much for all that you do. And I'm so looking forward to connecting you to some pretty cool people in Phoenix. Like, we're going to get this going here.
Yes.
And I just want to give a shout out, because last week Dr. J wasn't here, but I had a special guest. It was a military sister that was on. Her brother had served in Vietnam. And so he had wrote a bunch of letters back home and said he promised to send pennies to her from Vietnam. Well, you don't really find pennies in a jungle. So anyways, so he'd sent letters. And so the sister kept the letters, and she wrote this book in Larry's honor. And this book has started he was part of the cavalry. And so this is a book all about Larry and his time in Vietnam. And, you know, a lot of Vietnam veterans do not talk about Vietnam. But this was the opening catalyst, because she went to go find a lot of Larry's friends that he had served with, found a bunch of them, and they stood behind her and said, this book needs to get out. And within that, now all these veterans are coming forward, sharing their stories, talking about Vietnam and getting healed. How many years later, right? And so, because Vietnam was a long time ago. I don't know. I don't remember what year, so forgive me. But
69 to 75, roughly.
There you go. Just right before I was born, it ended. So 46 years ago. So wow. So anyways, so go check out that too, because we like I said, it's veterans, their families, and first responders for this particular show. And you know, anybody who knows me knows that veterans and first responders are basically like my brothers and sisters.
Yeah, and any Vietnam veteran who wants to be on the show, we have some openings in January and February, and I would love to highlight them, considering it's 50 years, you know. So that would be pretty amazing. I have one. I'll work on the rest at the Legion next weekend.
Cool.
Nice.
All right, stay tuned, guys. Be unstoppable in all that you do. Jane, stay back a little bit for a minute. And remember, same time, same channel next week. Next week is Dr. Shavers. Did I pronounce that right? Schaefer's. Dr. Schaefer's is next week. So stay tuned for that. And we have a lot of exciting new people coming on. We can't wait for you to meet them. And thank you so much, Dr. Jane. Like I said, I just love this interview. Love what you're doing.
Yeah.
And it's nice to meet another badass. So thank you.
Yes.
Thank you both.
Yeah. And everyone else.
Yes. Thank you. And thanks for the people in the audience and their questions and just being here.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for that.
Absolutely.
Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.